supportive and nice, and I try to help her any way I can. Do you remember I used to draw cartoons? Well, I still do, except now I get paid for it. I developed my love for comics and monsters into a job as a freelance artist and illustrator. I draw monsters for a living, and my belly button, well, let's just say I make far scarier monsters now. This is what happens in life. Our greatest fears can develop into our greatest triumphs, and almost enemies become our dearest friends. Is there anything that you're terrified of? Share it with us in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe to our channel.
With YouTube Kids, you can limit screen time without limiting imagination.
Hi guys, I'm Bella, and I have this irrational fear of flying. I mean, I'm so afraid of flying that I'll do anything to avoid it, even if it means crossing the country by bus. This time though, there was no getting around it. My sister was graduating, and if I wanted to be there, I had to fly. Our parents couldn't make it because our grandma was sadly in the hospital, so that meant I would be flying solo, and so here we go. It was my first time flying on my own, and I think everyone in the airport could tell. I was sweating so much, I thought the airport security would pull me aside. As I got on the plane, I started shaking, and only once I was safely in my seat with my seatbelt on did I start to calm down. I thought I'd get lucky and score a whole row to myself, but as I thought that, a young guy sat down next to me. Damn. Well, at least he was cute. Maybe this flight wouldn't be so bad after all. Before takeoff, we had a slight delay, and the young guy next to me seemed equally nervous. But as soon as we took off, he relaxed and turned to me to start a conversation. His name was Brady, he said, and he was heading west to meet up with some friends from his college days. Oh, so he was older, I realized. No way would my dad let me date an older guy. Then I stopped myself. Why was I even thinking these thoughts? I barely knew the guy. He could tell I was anxious, so he touched my arm and said, "Don't worry, this is a pretty good airline." Then he kept asking me questions like where I was going and what college I went to. I lied and I told him I was a freshman in college. If he knew I was still in high school, there's no way he would be interested. We ended up chatting for a good few hours, and I gave him my number. He said it'd be nice to grab a drink together during our time on the West Coast. I fell asleep with a grin on my face. I had successfully boarded my first solo flight without having a panic attack, and I even bagged myself a date. Jackpot! After a while, I woke up and I noticed Brady was nowhere to be seen. He must have gone to the bathroom. I reached into my bag for some mints and remembered I'd bought a newspaper. I didn't normally have much interest in reading them, but I was going to be doing an internship later that summer with a local newspaper as I was planning on studying journalism, so I thought I'd better swat up on what was happening in the world. I flipped through the first few pages. Nothing of interest caught my eye, and I decided I'd watch a movie instead. But then, just as I was putting the newspaper away, I spotted something. There was an article about a serial killer on the loose, and I kid you not. The mugshot of the killer looked exactly like Brady, but it couldn't be. I mean, the photo wasn't very clear, but it seriously looked like him. The more I looked, the more I realized it was him. I could feel my heart rate speeding up, and I knew what was coming next. I was going to faint. I was seriously panicking. I'd just given my number to a serial killer. I pressed the emergency button above my seat, and an air hostess rushed over just in time to see me slip off my chair and fall into a heap on the floor. The next thing I knew, I was laying down in first class with a jug of water in front of me. As I came to, I told the air hostess that there was a serial killer on the plane and that she needed to tell the pilot to stop the plane immediately and call the cops. The air hostess clearly didn't believe me. She told me I had fainted and that perhaps I was just delirious. She ordered me to drink some water and assured me I'd feel better in a moment. But I was seriously freaking out. I refused to go back to my seat, and I was paranoid. I kept expecting to see Brady coming up the aisle to look for me. What would I say to him? The air staff started to get quite impatient with me, and they told me that I could get in serious trouble if I didn't comply with their rules about going back to economy. But there was no way I was going back to my seat. Eventually, we landed after what felt like hours. I was about to ask the air hostess if she could help me get to my bag, but then I heard a commotion and noticed there were police officers and security guards entering the plane. And then there was Brady being escorted off the plane. Turns out he really was the serial killer, and one of the air hostesses had secretly believed me and made the call before we even landed. If I hadn't brought it to their attention, who knows what would have happened? And if I hadn't bought that newspaper, I may well have found myself on a date with a serial killer. And then who knows if I'd even be alive to tell this story. I'm not saying that you shouldn't speak to strangers, but just be careful who you trust. And if you have a feeling that something isn't right, always speak up about it. You never know. It might save your life. Have you ever had a close call like this before? Share your experience in the comments section with us.
Hey, I'm Maria. I'm 15, and something truly terrifying happened to me. It all started on a Saturday. I was with my friends exploring the woods on the outskirts of town. We went there fairly often, especially in the summer when we didn't have to worry about going to school. On this particular autumn day, my friends Annie and Sean weren't being much fun. I need to get back soon. I have to be in the raid on my game within the next hour, else my team will freak, Sean moaned. He was completely video game obsessed. In fact, he was so addicted that Annie and I barely saw him outside of school anymore. Sorry, Maria, but I have to go soon too. I have a nail appointment at 2 p.m. She held out her hands and looked down at the chipped nail polish on her index finger. It's an emergency. Fine. I'm just going to go home too, I huffed out. Bye. I gave them a weak wave before I stormed off across the dirt path. Maria, don't be like that, Annie shouted after me. I ignored her and carried on walking. I was really mad. All I'd wanted was one day with my friends. One day where they put me first, but as usual, they both had somewhere better to be. I was so angry that I carried on walking without taking much notice of where I was going. As I began to calm down, I realized that I was in a part of the woods that I hadn't been in before. There was a large clearing with a couple of good rocks to sit on, so I perched on one and scrolled through my phone. Of course, I didn't have any signal. I never did in these woods. I rested my head on my backpack and sighed. My friends sucked, and now I was alone in an unknown part of the woods. Oh, badly. It had swollen out, and even moving it a tiny bit was excruciating. The next day, I shouted out for help until my voice went hoarse. I ate my oatmeal bar and drank half of the water. I was so hungry and thirsty, but I knew that I had to save my supplies. I checked my phone signal again. The battery had died. I cried and cried until I had no tears left.
Because of this, I missed her. So when she reached out to me and invited me over for a pool party with her and her new friends, I agreed. I couldn't swim, but that didn't mean I wouldn't have fun lounging by the pool. The pool party started off loads of fun. Daisy and her new friends were being really nice to me, and it was good not to be at war with anyone anymore. They all went inside for drinks, and I stayed out by the pool. I sat at the edge of the pool and dangled my legs in the water. I heard footsteps behind me. It's so nice out here, I said. I felt hands press against my back and shove me into the water. I instantly went into panic mode and was thrashing about in the water. The more I tried to get above the surface, the deeper into the water I seemed to go. It was horrible. I honestly thought I was going to die. I thought I'd never get to talk to my mom again or hug my little sister. I remember arms around my waist and I was being pulled upwards. Hands pressed on my chest and I heard frantic voices. I coughed out so much water. I glanced at the relieved-looking faces around me until my eyes dropped on her. She didn't look worried or relieved. Instead, she just looked guilty. Turns out that Daisy's dad had rescued me from the pool, while Daisy had just stood by and watched me struggle. In the hospital, I told my parents what had happened, and they were shocked and called the police. I told the police what Daisy had done, and they went and spoke to her. She told them that she had forgotten that I couldn't swim and pushed me in as a joke. When I started struggling in the water, she went into panic mode and froze. The police seemed to believe her story, but I don't. Daisy knew that I couldn't swim as she had teased me about it for years. It seemed unlikely that this was something she had just forgotten about. She's also an amazing swimmer and she could have rescued me, but instead she just stood there and watched me nearly drown. I don't talk to Daisy anymore. In fact, I try to steer clear of her as much as possible. She's not my friend, and I don't think that she ever properly was. I wanted something positive to come out of this horrible ordeal, so I started swimming lessons. I have a private one once a week, so I don't have to learn with all of the little kids. The first time I stepped into the water, I was shaking so much and I was terrified, but my instructor calmed me down and was super nice to me. If anyone ever pushes me in a pool again, I will need to be rescued. That day, I experienced not one, but two worst, terrible moments in my whole life for sure. Almost dead and being drowned by a best friend. What about you? Has anyone you've trusted ever let you down or try to harm you? Leave your story down below to share with us. And don't forget to subscribe for more interesting stories.
Hey guys, so my name's Anna, and I'm going to tell you what it's like to have a mom who's a little person. It used to be that they were called midgets or dwarves, but nowadays they're just little people, 'cause that's all they really are, you know? People. Just little. My mom has something called achondroplasia. Basically, because of her DNA, she just didn't grow the same as everyone else. Her body is mostly normal, but her legs and arms are shorter. So the first thing everyone wants to know is whether or not I'm her real daughter. Duh, of course, princess clothes. And that would not work, because she's a lawyer. And the judge would be like, you need to wear grown-up clothes if you're going to argue that this guy is innocent. So she has a bunch of mini suits. She has mini jewelry now too, because my dad got her a necklace for her birthday once and it went down to her knees. And oh yeah, about being a lawyer. When my mom was little, she really wanted to be a pilot and fly planes. But she realized that for the safety of everyone else, it would be a bad idea to fly a plane when she couldn't see out the window. So instead of being all like, you need to make little person-sized planes, which meant she would pretty much only be able to fly other little people around, because the plane would be like way too small for regular-sized people, she was like, so that's not gonna work. But she still wanted to do something with her life. So she decided that while her body was small, her brain was still huge. She thought about being a doctor, but she was like, blood? Ew, gross. So that was out. Then she thought about being a banker, but customers would have to lean all the way over the counter to see her, and like their money would fall out onto her head, so that was out. Then she thought about how much she likes being right all the time. So she was like, voila, I'll be a lawyer. Most people were like, you can't be a lawyer, but her parents were like, yeah, you should totally be a lawyer. So she went to law school and studied and made really good grades, met my dad, had me, won 32 cases in a row, was named Lawyer of the Year, and now she's a judge. Actually, she's not just a judge, because she's one of the best judges on earth. People still make fun of her sometimes. They laugh and point fingers and tell her to go back to the North Pole like she's an elf or something. And they tease me about having to get things down from the cabinets for her. But my mom, nothing no one thought was possible. Because when you think about it, we're all pretty amazing. Hi, I'm Josie. I'm 16 years old and I have a sleepwalking problem. It started when I was really little, and sometimes I would wake up on the stairs or the couch with no recollection of how I got there. No one thought much of it. I guess my parents just presumed I'd gone downstairs to get a drink and then fallen back asleep. As I grew older, the sleepwalking increased, and I'd move toys all around my room and color in pictures. My mom said that she walked into my room once and she saw me having a full conversation with my toys, and she was about to tell me off for being out of bed, and then she realized what was going on. Apparently my speech was so fuzzy, and I was totally lost and had come to get her. She refused to sleep with the light off for at least a week after that. I was 11 years old when my sleepwalking went from cute to